CONNIE GARTSIDE'S TRIUMPH, Chapter 14. When the two girls entered the kitchen for breakfast the next morning, they were not surprised to find Malc and Tom at the table, along with Ralph, Grandad and Elsie. They were surprised to discover that Mikey was with them. Grandad looked up. "Ah, there you are. We've been waiting for you two." "What's going on?" Rosie asked. "Has something exciting happened?" Connie echoed. "As your financial backer, I've decided to call a business meeting." The two girls exchanged glances and took their places at the table. At that point, Mr. Gorbooth entered. "Morning, everybody," he greeted them. "Is there any chance of a cup of tea?" "I'll make it," Rosie volunteered. "We were just about to begin a business meeting," Grandad said, rather pointedly. "A business meeting?" "Yes. These children and Ralph are embarking on a business venture." "Surely they are rather young to commence a business." Grandad shook his head. "Although young Rosie, Connie and Mikey here are still at school, it's important they think of their future. The days are long gone when a youngster could leave school and walk into a job. Thanks to Thatcherism and the disastrous neoliberal idea that the country can rely on banking, the financial and service sectors to pay its way, the engineering industries and manufacturing generally have collapsed. Industrial capitalism isn't working, is it, Mr. Gorbooth? What are today's unemployment figures?" 2.5 million officially, Malc intervened sharply. "Probably nearer 3 in reality, and still growing." "Aye, the Tories are good at fiddling their boots." Mr. Gorbooth did not rise to the bait, but he did ask if he could observe the proceedings, and it was agreed, in the form of a round of nods, that he could. Rosie produced his tea and took her seat next to him. "Now then, to sum up where we stand, our Rosie wants to be an engineer, and has done so for a long time. Ralph has already learnt how to braze and bronze weld, and, having had some experience in that field myself, I can assure you he's good at it. He's attending a night school course in mechanical engineering. He has a workshop and the tools he requires, and has already made a prototype sledge, which I understand young Connie has subjected to a number of severe tests, although she's failed to damage it. Mikey is a keen and, I must say, highly skilled woodworker. Rosie and Ralph want to start a business making sledges, and they want Mikey to work with them. Is that what you want, Mikey?" "Yes." "Right. Now, I've put up the cash for enough materials for 2 more sledges. Once you've sold them, you're on your own. You'll have to buy more materials with whatever money you make. Work at it when you can. Make a success of it, and none of you will have to search for work when you finish school. Do you understand?" Ralph, Rosie and Mikey nodded. Connie remained noticeably silent. Ralph looked across at her. She returned his look, but still remained silent. Her face was a mask, giving no hint of her feelings at being left out of Jack's final summing up. Ralph frowned, wondering what was going on in her mind. Normally, Connie's face was as expressive as a boot. "Finally," he said, "I think we should involve Connie." Her face broke into a smile at long last, much to Ralph's relief. Unfortunately, Connie soon wiped the smile off his face. "I may not be available. I've arranged a course of instruction," she pronounced gravely, looking at Malc for a brief moment, as a result of which he gave her a quick smile of encouragement. "A course of instruction in the art and science of bicycle frame design and construction. Once I'm qualified, I may be able to subcontract the brazing work to you, providing your work is up to my exacting standards." Everybody, with the sole exception of the frame builder, looked at her in astonishment, including Rosie, who had been given a prior warning but hadn't taken it seriously. "I never thought you'd turn out to be a selfish capitalist," Rosie responded. "Fancy you wanting to exploit other people's labour." "That's a bit unfair, Rosie," her grandfather intervened. Isn't your business going to be a capitalist enterprise? No, it's not, and you of all people know it's not. We've agreed to form a workers' cooperative. We'll employ ourselves using our own capital, and we'll all share equally in the results of our own labour. Grandad smiled. Ralph backed Rosie up. Yes, we've agreed our enterprise will be under democratic management and control. If you want to be involved, you can be, little sister, but we are not subcontracting our labour to you or anybody else. Our workshop will be a capitalist-free zone. We are all free labourers. We have no intention of becoming anybody's wage slaves. Does that mean you'll take turns brewing up and doing all the basic work, like keeping the place clean, the fetching and carrying and labouring generally? Of course, and we'll train each other to do each other's jobs. So if somebody's ill or on holiday or something, there will always be one of us to fill in for them. And will you consider making other things besides sledges? Of course, we're not daft. We've already agreed to make walking sticks like the ones I made for you and Rosie. Mikey will be really good at that, and there's a big market for them. Right, Connie said with a grin. I will consider your offer, and let you know my decision when I've had chance to consult my business advisor. Would you like to go for a ride this morning, Connie? Malc asked. I fancy visiting Buxton. Tom looked at his dad in disgust. He hadn't bargained on a walking holiday. Mr. Gorbooth sipped his tea quietly and somewhat thoughtfully. What are your thoughts on the meeting you've just witnessed, Mr. Gorbooth? Elsie asked. The children and Ralph had left the kitchen for the workshop, leaving the adults alone. Quite remarkable, the gentleman responded. I've never come across a set of children quite like them, so self-confident, and each and every one so polite and well-behaved, and yet full of fun and all so lively. I had a chance to talk to that young lad Tom this morning. I was admiring the tandem. He told me with great pride that you'd made it, Mr. Cowle, and he related some of the adventures you've shared. It's hard to believe he's only just turned 10 years of age. He has a remarkable vocabulary for one so young. Malc remained silent. Can I ask you how you became a bicycle frame builder? It's an unusual occupation. Malc shook his head with a wry smile. Necessity is the mother of invention. The gentleman seemed to be puzzled, but before he could pursue the question further, Jack intervened. I know Malc well. He served his time as an engineering apprentice. He completed his time as a draftsman, a creative job he loved. He was an active trade unionist, and eventually became interested in politics. He joined the Communist Party. A lethal combination, that, being an active trade unionist and a communist. From that point on, he was a marked man. He found himself blacklisted by the Engineering Employers Federation and the Shipbuilders and Repairers National Association, simply because he had the temerity to help to defend and advance the conditions of his fellows. Unable to obtain work in the trade he took great pride in, unwilling to accept a future of life on the dole, and with young Tom about to appear on the scene, he reinvented himself as a bicycle frame builder. Me and thousands more over the decades, Malc pointed out. Good job we live in a free country. The gentleman, whose father was a captain of industry, was about to respond when Elsie decided to put in her twopenn'orth. I'm no expert on politics, but I don't think any of the children are particularly remarkable at all, Mr. Gorbooth. They are perfectly normal children. They all come from different backgrounds, but they do have important things in common. The guest looked at her, somewhat surprised. Elsie smiled once more. Rosie, Tom and Mikey are all being brought up by a single parent. None of their parents planned to be single parents, but that is the way things have turned out. None of the parents have had an easy time, but they all got on with it. More importantly, all the children just like our Ralph and Connie, know they are loved and have stability in their lives. It is my belief that love and stability are probably the two most important factors children need if they are to flourish, and I've yet to find a single person who can prove otherwise. The 4 family units are quite different from each other, but they're all focused on the well-being of the kids. They and I know the children are our future. They and thousands like them are this country's future. They and their parents, single or otherwise, deserve better than the cheap, hypocritical jibes and threats the present government are trumpeting. Malc smiled. I agree with Elsie, he stated quietly. You can take that message back to your friend John Major, Mr. Blackwell, isn't it? Mr. Blackwell, MP. Tell him to forget Victorian family values. Victorian family life was no picnic. Any student of the Industrial Revolution knows that for working people in our part of the world, it was virtually impossible to have any family life. Husbands, wives and children had to work in the mill, 12 hours a day, 6 days a week for a subsistence wage. As for the middle and upper classes, their family life wasn't up to much either, was it? Childcare was never an upper-class forte. Didn't the mothers put their children's breastfeeding out to a wet nurse, and their childcare in the hands of maids and governesses? As soon as the boys were 7, didn't they send them away to preparatory school and then to public school? In fact, isn't that what happened to you in the 20th century, Mr. Blackwell? The wives and daughters were their husbands' and fathers' chattels. The former were often seduced by their husbands' business competitors, and the daughters were all too often bartered into marriage in order to cement business, financial and political alliances. Love and marriage were two quite different concepts in the Victorian era, weren't they? In short, many examples of middle-class and upper-class marriage were little more than a form of enforced prostitution. You need to remind Major, it is not the role of government to dictate family structures or lecture parents on a subject he clearly has no knowledge of. It's the government's job to assist the development of economic and social conditions in which children can thrive and be encouraged to play a positive role in the society. His predecessor, the saintly Margaret, had the temerity to deny even existed. They need to know they have the right to work when they leave school, and that their parents have the right to leisure and being able to spend time with their children instead of working all the hours God sends in order to eke out a living. At this point, the Right Honourable Robert Blackwell, Member of Parliament and Junior Minister in the John Major government, had had enough. He sported a face resembling that of a little boy caught with his hand in the jar of barley sugars. He realised he had to inform his lady friend and fellow MP, Edwina, that they had been rumbled. He wondered if he should phone his wife and advise Edwina to contact her spouse. Would the story be given to the press? He made his excuses and left the room. "I've a feeling I've lost 2 paying guests," Elsie said with a grin. "How on earth did you know who he was?" Jack O'Donnell asked Malc. "Well, I recognised him for a start, but only after I'd been told his name. I debated with him once at a public meeting when I worked in London for the Communist Party as National Election Agent, although it must have been over 15 years ago. He's changed a lot since then. His hair's disappeared and his paunch has grown. No doubt I've changed too. He obviously didn't remember me." "So, who told you his name?" "Young Connie. She and Elsie were changing the sheets. He left a letter from one of his constituents on the table next to the bed. Connie noticed the name." "That's right," Elsie smiled. "And my lady's not his wife either. Now we know just exactly what the Tories mean by a return to Victorian family values. You should have seen the laundry she'd left all over the floor. Talk about a strumpet, and in my best bedroom too." "Ah well," Malc said, There's one law for the rich and quite another for the labouring poor, as Disraeli pointed out many decades ago, when Victoria was but a young queen, and he was a bit of a radical. Postscript to Connie Gartside's Triumph. When I commenced writing this short story, I didn't know where the characters were going to lead me. I never do. However, the year I set the tale in naturally took me back to my own situation at the time. Like Pearl Grimsditch and Rosie's mother, Alice Ackroyd, I too was a single parent in November 1991. My son Tom, around whom my life inevitably revolved, had just turned 10, and like Pearl and Alice, I found the message of the then Tory government with regard to the need for a return to Victorian family values both offensive and hypocritical. Not least because in the case of divorced parents like myself, it tended to create unnecessary divisions between the parent with day-to-day care and the so-called absent parent. In 1993, Major compounded his error with his Back to Basics campaign. We have yet to see how the lives of Rosie and Mikey pan out, but I am pleased to report that my son, now aged 30 at the time of writing, is a highly successful website designer and plays a positive role in the society to which he belongs. The fact he has achieved this, despite my rather eccentric methods of childcare and nurture, is in itself proof of the resilience of children, and, without doubt, the positive role in his life played by the absent parent, namely his mother. During the same period, John Major was of course recovering from his 4-year dalliance with Edwina Currie. As for the Blessed Margaret, she remains, as far as I know, the only British Prime Minister to have reared a son who is a convicted international terrorist. So much for Victorian family values. I think I'll stick with my own. Malc Cowle, Manchester, 2012. This audiobook has been brought to you by the Northern Grove Publishing Project in support of the Working Class Movement Library, Salford, M5 4WX. The children's adventures continue in the third and final book in the Trespassers series, namely, The Bicycle Frame Builder's Apprentice.